Welcome back to Sports Roundtable, State News' sports podcast covering all things MSU sports. But we got some fun topics today. I'm Jacob Smith.
And I'm Maddie Warden. Sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. No, I know. But welcome back to another episode of Sports Roundtable. Today we're going to be talking a little bit MSU with a very exciting record that was just broken. Some of you may be able to kind of figure out what that is before we even mention it. But
drum roll, please.
Tom Izzo is a new record holder. Woo! He broke the record for most Big Ten men's basketball wins. Absolutely unbelievable. So we're going to touch on that because obviously we can't go a podcast episode without acknowledging the GOAT, the greatness of Tom Izzo. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think the stars aligned a little too perfectly when we played Indiana at home for him to break that record. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's the first team that he got his first Big Ten win against. It's Bob Knight's Indiana Hoosiers, and now he has a chance to break Bob Knight's record against Indiana at the Breslin Center. And it didn't happen. But like I said, I think the stars maybe aligned a little too perfectly that night. It was a good game, no matter what happened. But against Illinois, you get the season sweep over Illinois, and you get the Big Ten record. So that's a huge win for Michigan State just in general. Still trying to hold on to that second place spot in the Big Ten, trying to get those 2 bye weeks heading into the Big Ten tournament. I mean, that's a huge win for Michigan State.
Yeah, that was a great game, and I was actually in attendance for that Indiana one. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of tell, like you said, it was kind of a little bit too perfect for the scenario, but they shot 17.4% from three that game. Like, obviously, the three-point struggles have been what they have been this entire season, but you're not going to win many, if any, basketball games shooting that poorly from the field, right, especially from three-point range. They shot 38.2% from the field in general besides three-pointers. So obviously it was not what we were accustomed to seeing from Michigan State that game. But I think that bouncing back against Illinois it was like the perfect response. And I don't care. Like, obviously it would have been nice. I was at the end of the game. Nice to be seeing it like broken at home or whatever. But playing against Illinois, you already beat them once, and that game was also what it was. It was a little bit chippy. Obviously, there was Illinois fans on X crying all the time about the refs and how that went, and we all kind of got our laugh at that. But to go back in there again, go to Champaign, take down a very, very good Illinois team to break the record at that. Obviously, it was like a great game just because of how much adversity we kind of showed. MSU went down by, I think, close to 15 points in that first half and then stormed all the way back. I mean, that was fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, like you said, it's just the way that this team can bounce back from being down at half, and then we take that. I think the most we had in oh, wait, no, I'm thinking of Purdue. I'm jumping too far ahead. But just being able to come back from being down and show that perseverance of this Izzo squad. I think that's something that they've done this whole season, and they just continue to do it again and again in these big games.
Yeah, and Izzo said this entire season's motto is based off strength in numbers, and they've shown that every single game. I mean, it doesn't matter how many points I feel like we're down. I feel like there's always that chance that Michigan State's going to come back just because of how many new guys we can throw in. Even if teams are on a run against us, similar to how Illinois was in that first half of that game. I mean, we throw in new guys. We're getting 10, 11 guys checked into the game. So it's like Illinois is getting a new look pretty much every stoppage of play. So I think that's just why this team's had so much success this year, especially. And then obviously in that Illinois game, it was very nice to see Jackson Kohler kind of come along, especially in that second half. He really came alive. 9 of 13 field goals on 23 points and 4 of 5 from three, which for Jackson Kohler, I mean, if you told me that sentence maybe 2 years ago, like when he was a freshman, I would have called you the craziest person ever that watches MSU sports. His 3-point shot has come such a long way.
Yeah, I think even talking about that a little bit, you see these different players who will get behind the arch and shoot a three now. It shows just how much work that they put in at practice, and just being able to play every position on the court is a huge thing, especially for Jackson Kohler, who has come such a long way from his freshman year.
Agreed. I feel like that one of those games is about to happen because he's been taking a very, very increased load of threes this season. But I think it's also a good thing. It expands his bag, I guess, as you would say, and provide some new looks for the defense, provide some new moves for him to be able to do. I mean, if you can pick and pop a three like that, his release is quick. It gets it off. So nice little Jackson Kohler performance there. And I think that is something that's really helped out MSU this season, their big play, their bigs, the three bigs, Simone Zapala, Carson Cooper, and Jackson Kohler. I know Xavier Booker is technically a big, a little bit of a stretch for. His development hasn't been exactly what we've been accustomed to or wanting to see, but besides the point, those three bigs that I mentioned have also really stepped up for MSU. I think that also played a little bit in the game last night against Purdue, which we'll get to, but I think that just the way that they're all contributing is really special, especially Kohler, and I think Carson Cooper coming in too. He doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but he will play defense. He'll keep MSU in the game. I think that's also been a really cool thing to see.
Absolutely, and you talk about strength in numbers. You talk about the depth of the lineup. It's clear for the Spartan team, and I kind of want to jump ahead to Purdue. You talk about win number 354. 354 against Indiana.
Yeah.
How about 355 against Purdue? It's the second time that the Spartans have beat Purdue in 11 games, and that was just overall a great performance. So I think at the end of the game we ended up leading most by like 12 points at one point. Yeah. 35 points off the bench.
Unreal.
You talk about that depth in the lineup. I mean, it's just insane to see what these guys have come from last year to what this team is now.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. They had 4 scorers in double digits last night, and Simone Zapala and Jackson Kohler also had 9 each, so right on that cusp. That was a scrappy game, and I feel like it kind of had that feel. We kind of figured going into the game, especially against the 13th ranked Purdue Boilermakers, who are a spot ahead of us, who also had 7 losses coming into it, that it was going to be a little bit scratchy. You knew it was going to be close, but I just think that the defense really stepped up, and also the offense, because we've shown our weaknesses, I think, a little bit, especially against Indiana when they came out in a 2-3 zone and they were really forcing us to shoot from the outside. Yeah. Really wanted to see what we could do to kind of handle that. And we've had teams come out and play us in a zone, and then Purdue started the game playing us in a zone. So I think that they were able to Michigan State was able to overcome that very well. They found the guard play was also really good, in addition to the bigs as well, because especially for those, like Jace hit a shot, first shot of the game was a 3 by Jace, and they had some threes falling, but those big guys like Cooper, Zapala, Kohler, they were all down low and they were all getting open. The guards were finding them. It was really, really good carving up of a zone defense, and that was so refreshing to see for a team that really hasn't been able to handle them too well this season. Yeah,
absolutely, and as well as the points off the bench, like we were kind of talking about too, 19 points off of turnovers. You talk about the defense and how these guys are playing and having these big guys being able to force the ball over. That played a huge role in the win against Purdue last night, and I think that it was just so needed for that team, because you talk about a guy like Zach Edey, who has just he was dominant when he was in the Big Ten, and that was one of the reasons that we couldn't win against Purdue, is because they had Zach Edey, 7'4", just a big guy. Being able to get that win over Purdue is just so huge for this team. You talk about getting that win over Illinois and how big that is for the Big Ten standings. Getting that win over Purdue is huge, and now they have Michigan coming up, and Michigan's ranked 11th, I think. They're just a smidge higher than Michigan State. That place is going to be off the charts. Yeah. Chrysler Center's, the roof is going to come off of that place.
I know. They're not going to play around on Friday.
No.
I think it's a testament to what we're used to seeing with Big Ten basketball. It was always supposed to come down to Michigan and Michigan State. Like, them two teams at the top of the conference, it just means more. And that's especially what we've grown up as fans with our age, how the Big Ten has always been for basketball. And like, going off one last point against these past few victories, I feel like leading up to because there's every game for Michigan State to close the season is a big game, and that's been going back just beginning of February, even January, especially when you enter Big Ten conference play. Yeah. But I feel like every victory that they've kind of racked up for themselves is another victory where they create their own identity again, and they keep on doing it again and again and again. I know we talked about their motto being strength in numbers for the whole season, but I feel like every single win has a different feel to it and a different aspect of basketball in itself just kind of arise. That defense yesterday was just beautiful, holding a firebowering offense like Purdue to 66 points, forcing Braden Smith to have 6 turnovers, because Braden Smith has been around for a long time. Great point guard, probably going to be all Big Ten first team. And you come out, force him to not get a comfortable shot. Every time he'd go up, he'd either shoot a tough shot or he'd look to kick out, and then we'd swarm and be able to turn the ball over. I mean, it was just beautiful to watch. Every game feels different, and it just like that also contributes to their depth. How deep this team is, how each person on the floor can do different things. Especially guys, if you got like Cohen Carr and Frankie Fiddler playing like they did on offense, both and defense. Nightmare for teams coming off. Trey Holloman leading the second unit. Yeah. Carson Cooper holding everybody down. I think it's just great.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about they have just found a different way to win in every single victory that they've had this season. They've had offensive just powerhouse games. They've had great defensive games. They've had games where they're just taking points off of turnovers. There's so many different ways that this team has been able to win. And honestly, I feel like Purdue last night was kind of just a culmination of all of those ways that they've won. And they just brought everything full circle. I feel like Purdue was probably one of their most put together games, especially in that second half. They just played outstanding against Purdue. And then going back to what you said about it's just so much more fun to play in the Big Ten when Michigan and Michigan State are both at the top of the conference. It's so entertaining for these teams to just rule.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
That's what Big Ten's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much fun to see these teams just be competitive, and one's not getting blown out by the other. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, can't even describe or count how many instant classics have been made from those teams matching up. But that being said, they do have a big game on Friday coming up against the head, like Michigan, like we were saying. Michigan holds a 1-game lead in the Big Ten standings over Michigan State with 2 losses in the conference. 3 losses in the conference. Michigan State has 4. Or no.
No, we have 3.
No, we have 3. Michigan has 2. Oh, my gosh, I butchered that. But, yeah, so 1-game lead for Michigan over Michigan State in the Big Ten standings. That win last night also put a 1.5-game lead, 1.5-game lead over Purdue, and Wisconsin's hanging in there now. They moved up to the 3rd spot with 1 game back in Michigan State. But I think this matchup on Friday is going to be really intriguing just because I feel like Michigan State hasn't kind of seen the look that Michigan brings out, obviously with Danny Wolf and Vladimir Godin, 2 really, really strong centers. Danny Wolf is also pretty much like a stretch 4, kind of how he plays, but he's 7 feet tall. You're gonna have to guard him on the perimeter. It's gonna be a big test for guys like Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper, Simone Zapala. I like putting Xavier Booker on him, but I just feel like Booker's lack of offense in the last few games have kind of diminished his playing time a little bit. But also, I think it's gonna be a different look than what Michigan State's seen kind of this season, especially in the Big Ten. I think that's why Michigan is a little bit scary for them, but also, nevertheless, it should be a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what you said, we haven't seen a Michigan team coached by somebody different in quite a few years. And obviously, you see the downfall with Juwan Howard and how he recruited last year. And then you get in Dusty May. Is that?
Yeah.
You get in Dusty May, and he's just done an outstanding job with that Wolverine squad, just trying to put them back on the board, bring them back to the horizon. And it's going to be so interesting to see how Michigan and Michigan State match up, especially coming into a game where anything can happen. Just a completely revamped Michigan Wolverine team against, honestly, you could say a revamped Michigan State team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one.
Completely different look from last year, too, when Izzo set his record with 700 wins on his birthday. That was a fun win against Michigan, but obviously a team that had, I think, 8 or 9 wins like total last season, coming in at the top of the conference. Definitely going to be a tough game, but a great environment nevertheless. Michigan State closed out the season against Michigan twice in the final month of the season, so it should definitely be exciting, especially on Friday. We're going to transition a little bit now, give another shout out to MSU baseball. We were talking about them last week on the pod.
Yes, we were.
Kind of just like didn't really know what to expect. Like that was kind of our whole message, but they're starting the season on 4-0. Which is really, really exciting for Michigan State baseball. First time since 2020 they started 4-0. They also started 6-0 in 2016, so their best start since those 2 campaigns. But, yeah, shout out MSU baseball. They're also 14-3, and Jake Boss is 17 season openers, so kind of expected, but series wins over Western Michigan and Monmouth. Very excited for the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said, we talked about it last week. We knew that Joey Jurwa came out of the transfer portal, and there was something in the air for this team of him jumping back out and recommitting, coming back to Michigan State. 11 strikeouts for him in the season debut against Western Michigan, and it put him up for Big Ten Pitcher of the Week, his first career honor. I mean, he's a sophomore, junior, so it's nice to see him get that recognition and have such a great game against Western. first pitcher to win this honor since Harrison Cook in 2023. So it's been a long time coming for the Spartans for getting a Big Ten Pitcher of the Week. And yeah, you're right. It was a great start for the MSU baseball team. Didn't know what to expect. It's good for them. Good for them.
Joe was a junior coming into this campaign, so obviously for him, very, very good confidence booster. We knew he was going to be good, but just to be able to get that recognition, especially after a hot start, it's great to see. Obviously, kind of want to see how their offense is going to be, because this is also a small sample size. It's 4 games. Obviously, it's a hot start, but they only scored 8 combined runs against Western Michigan, and they scored 6 combined runs in those 2 games against Monmouth. So kind of just have to see what this is still in store. It's definitely still early, because obviously we saw plenty of upsets around the college baseball world as well. Teams like Georgia go down, and some other teams at the top. I believe Texas A&M might have lost at the top. So I think just kind of have to see how it goes for the rest of the season, but definitely a good confidence booster nevertheless, and hopefully the success continues, because this is probably the most uncertainty we've kind of had in a long time for MSU baseball, good or bad, not coming into the season with bad expectations. There could be some good in the air, so it's nice to see.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, and hopefully they can keep it rolling.
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to give a little shout out to them, because we did talk about it last week, and starting off like that, kind of have to recognize it where it's due. But on to our last segment of the show today. Got some exciting talking to do.
I had to wear the sweatshirt.
Yeah, Maddie came prepared. We had some kind of all-star break.
Some kind of something.
Some kind of hockey, some kind of something going on in the NHL. The Four Nations face-off. If you haven't heard of it, I believe it took place of the NHL All-Star game this year.
Correct.
And
they replaced it.
I think that is probably the best decision they could have made. If you don't know what it is, it's a little bit of a tournament between Sweden, Finland, Canada, and USA. Kind of all the star players from each of those nations coming together, almost like Olympic style, round robin style, playing for their nations. And we're going to get to how much impactful it was playing for their nations in a little bit. But just a little bit of a round robin tournament style for in place of the NHL All-Star game and what they've done in seasons past. But Maddie, this was probably some of the most unbelievable hockey we've seen in a while. So kind of take me through what you saw. I know we saw a lot. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been amazing to see these guys. I mean, who would have thought that Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, and Connor McDavid would all be on a power play together? That's
unreal.
Filthy. It's unreal. It honestly, the NHL has showed up. Or has shown off, I don't even know how to put it. They have proved that they are one of the best leagues with replacing an NHL All-Star game with something like this. I mean, the NFL has the Pro Bowl. They play flag football. The NBA has the NBA All-Star game.
Which
it's not really a game.
4 times in the last
right.
seasons.
And then you have NHL players who are still just ready to go and want to keep playing, and then they put on that jersey and everything goes out the window for these teams. They're supposed to be on their all-star break and a break from playing regularly, and these guys have played harder than I've ever seen them play in their lives. So, yeah, I mean, USA clinched a spot in the championship game. They have a rematch against Canada, who they beat just last Saturday. And man, oh man, what a start to that game. 3
fights in 9 seconds.
Oh,
When is the last time you've seen that in a hockey game? I mean, other than Matt Rampy probably going out for the New York Rangers and going and kind of hitting everybody he sees, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, last year New Jersey and the New York Rangers at puck drop, every single player on the ice dropped the gloves. So we've seen it recently, but not for the U.S. and Canada to do that. You have both Kachucks out on the ice, which is already deadly to begin with. Their dad, Keith, was definitely a fighter back in his day. But Matthew drops the gloves first, Brady goes next, and just a few seconds later, JT Miller goes. I mean, that was just the most electric thing I have ever seen in my life. I didn't know what to do with myself, honestly. I didn't know what to do.
The announcers didn't either, because they were like, all right, well, let's see what happens. Oh, they're dropping them again. Yeah. Oh, and then they're dropping them again.
Like, do we turn into WWE play-by-play, or what do we do at this point? But man, oh man, it's been absolutely electric. Obviously, Canada and the U.S. have definitely had the powerhouse teams going into this. You have Canada with your Crosbys, your McKinnons, your McDavids. You've got Cale Makar on defense. But for the U.S., you've got, I think that comes back to talking about depth of lineups. You see, I think the U.S. just has more depth in their lineup than Canada does, and Canada has really struggled with their goaltending through this tournament. They've had Jordan Binnington starting the past few games. Logan Thompson was absolutely robbed from the Capitals making this tournament. But then you have, on the other side for the U.S., you have Connor Hellebuck, who's been a Vezina Trophy nominee, won the Vezina last year. You've got Jake Ottinger and Jeremy Swayman, who are both really young guys who are just great in the goal. And the U.S. really proved that they had the better goaltending in that game against Canada. But it's
unreal.
I
know. I think, obviously, the reason the fights occurred, too, to provide a little context, was the booing of the national anthem. Obviously, Canada fans in the arena booed the United States national anthem, and I feel like the response was pretty self-explanatory for that action. I mean, obviously, it's disrespectful for any nation to do the same. I believe that Canada also got boos in their game following this one. Because if you're going to start that fight, be prepared for what comes back your way, and obviously they got their SHIT handed to them, but unbelievable game. That USA-Canada game was also just a great display of hockey, and I think, like you mentioned, this is their all-star break, so they're not even obligated to be here. Obviously, we're not seeing like every single person that we have competing for these nations, but I mean, USA has got the likes of Jack Eichel, Jake Gunsel, Jack Hughes, Dylan Larkin, Austin Matthew, and Brady Tkachuk all on offense. Like that, if you put all those guys on a team in the NHL, they're winning probably 82 out of 82 games. It's unreal. So I think it's just a great product for the average hockey viewer, average sports fan viewer, because obviously my hockey knowledge is not as great as yours is, Maddie, but it had me tuned in, getting on the edge of my seat. Obviously, the game was good, too. Canada started out with the lead. USA scored 3 unanswered, including a Dylan Larkin goal to end the game. Our Lord and Savior out here in Red Wings country, right?
Yes.
But, Dylan Larkin kind of iced the game, and then they added a third empty netter for United States. And, it's just... I think other leagues should take notes, because I know it's not as hockey-related, but you mentioned how other leagues kind of... Their all-star game, break, whatever it may be, is kind of a joke. We just saw with the NBA. The NBA had their all-star break the same exact weekend as the NHL did. And obviously, besides the dunk contest with Mac McClung three-peating, the ratings were down. There was more commercial time than there was actual NBA all-star game time, with Kevin Hart talking for about 2 hours combined with commercials. Obviously, nobody wants to tune into that. So I think that the NHL is doing the right thing. They realize that all-star games really aren't maybe the exact thing that they were 2000s, 90s, 80s, just because of how people have kind of taking breaks a little bit, take it as a break, because it is technically an all-star break, and they don't put maybe the same effort in. But I think NHL really thought about it, took a mold of what it could be. The product's been great, and I'd love to see this continue in future years. It's obviously worked so far.
Yeah, it is absolutely has worked, and now they're bringing back the Hockey World Cup, which is going to be unreal, especially if they put Russia into the play there. There's so many. I mean, if you can get Ovi's probably close to retirement here, but man, if it were him and Kirill Kaprizov and just a few of those big Russian guys out on the ice together, that would be a terrifying team. But coming into this championship game, I mean, this is a version of their gold medal game.
Pretty much.
It's huge. This game's huge. There's some questions up in the air of who will be playing for the U.S. Brady Tkachuk did not practice today. Matthew Tkachuk and Austin Matthews were both back out on the ice, but they have Charlie McAvoy, who was unfortunately put in the hospital a couple days ago due to an infection in his shoulder. So they lose one of those guys as a defensive powerhouse. They have Jake Sanderson now, who will play as their backup, but now they have to figure out who they're going to call up as U.S. defenseman just to have backup. Everybody thought that it was going to be Quinn Hughes, and Twitter went absolutely wild over that, and there were so many memes out there that were cracking me up about that. But unfortunately, Quinn Hughes is still recovering from his injury before the All-Star break. So now they're calling up Brett Pesce from the New Jersey Devils. So Jake Sanderson gets his shot to play in the gold medal game with the U.S. Hopefully, Charlie McAvoy can recover before regular season starts again. But, I mean, the U.S. has played so hard that they've still got guys that are a little banged up. So it's tough going back into the regular season, but hopefully the U.S. can pull off a win against Canada. Go USA.
Yeah, right. No, I know USA, but obviously facing anybody in a rematch that you already played and having it be one of probably the most electric hockey games we've seen in a good amount of time, it's going to be hard to win twice. And I feel like Canada's roster outmatches us just a little bit, especially with adding on to these injuries. I mean, McAvoy was completely all over the place in terms of hitting people, and
he had like 4 hits in the first 30 minutes of the game against Canada.
Yeah, so he's been active on those hits for pretty much this entire tournament. I just feel like it's like I said, it might be a little bit tough. We kind of don't know how this is going to be like coming in, because especially for a rematch, it's never going to be probably the same game that we saw first. You can see that with playoff series in different sports. You see that with pretty much any form of a rematch. They're not always going to be the same story as the first one. We might not get another instant classic. We may as well. You never know. But I think that's also some of the risks that the NHL is taking with doing this tournament, because you're risking that some of your star players in the NHL and for the league, not just for the All-Star break, are getting hurt. They're going to miss some time. And then obviously that diminishes some teams' hopes for how their season's going to outlook. I mean, the Bruins are kind of right in the thick of things, and they need to contend for the playoffs. So losing McAvoy, someone like that, is not going to be great for them as their season resumes in a few days. So it's just, that's the risk you take, but also you're getting a good product of hockey. I just really hope that USA can kind of pull it out, because I feel like there's a little bit of adversity to be faced here. And obviously, you kind of just have to see how it goes. But also, that's kind of the thing. Like, once you're in a game with such high stakes, you wipe everything else out the window. Everybody's obviously been playing for their nation, especially for USA, knowing that they're probably going to be a little bit of an underdog. I mean, tickets are in the 700s for getting in games, like $700 to get in. This game has so much implication. I feel like it's not Super Bowl level, but it's got that kind of feel for hockey. And for the midseason All-Star break, you can't get much better.
Especially for these diehard fans that just want to see their country get a win like this. Obviously, we've been lucky with the U20 World Juniors the past couple of years, with USA going back-to-back gold medals for the first time in history. And Trey Augustine has been the goalie for that, so it really brings it back to MSU and our roots here. But you talk about it's so hard to win in these high-stake games after a